In today's video, I'm going to create a GPT-4 Vision powered AI computer assistant. So basically, I want to have a button on my keyboard that when I press it, it will open up an input box. And I can type into that input box a prompt. And the prompt will be sent to GPT-4 Vision along with a screenshot of my computer. And it can then respond based on what is in the screenshot and what I asked. So for example, if I'm working on a spreadsheet, I can ask it for how to create a specific formula or something. Or if I happen to open up Vim by accident, then maybe I can ask for help on how to exit. So let's see if GPT-4 Vision knows how to exit Vim. Now the first thing we have to do is we have to be able to open up some windows. Now I am not a GUI expert, but I have been asking ChatGPT recently how to use the Tkinter Python library. Now, I haven't looked at the documentation of Tkinter, I've just asked ChatGPT, but hey, isn't that enough? So first we have to import Tkinter as tk, and then we can make a window with tk.tk. And we can set a title for the window, for example, we can say window.title, and let's say ask assistant. And we can then do window.main loop to start the main loop of Tkinter. And if we then run this thing, Python 3 main.py, then we have a window here. Amazing. But we have to put the input box here. So how do we do that? Well, we can say that the input box is going to be tk.input. Or maybe not. What is it called? tk.entry. It is entry. And we pass into the entry the master window, which is the window here. And not sure if we need anything else. What else does this thing take? Some configuration, background border and something. Never mind. Let's just do that. And then we have to say input box.pack. And pack, I think, is a term used in GUI design, which just means putting the element inside of the window. And we can pass in here a paddy, which is not actually a paddy, it is a pad y. So this is the y-axis padding. So let's put some padding in there, and let's also do pad x. Let's put 10 there as well. So if we now run this thing again, then look at this, we have an input box. Awesome. Let's also add a label there, so it says ask the assistant a question or something like that. And it is similar to this entry thing, but this is going to be a label. And let's in fact call it a label. And let's also add a button. So the submit button is going to be tk button. And again we pass in the window here and the text in the button. And of course we need a label text as well. So let's put here text equals ask the assistant. And the button is going to be, I don't know, ask. And let's also do submit button dot pack. And let's do the paddy and padx. Okay. And let's try to run this thing. And look at this. We have ask the assistant with a field for putting in the question and then an ask button. Now, nothing happens if we press this. So how do we bind something to this? Let's see. Do we have in the constructor here something? Let's hover here and we have an anchor, we have a bitmap border command. Command sounds like something that we might want to use. So let's see if it is in fact command that we pass in here. Does it tell the type? Button command. Okay, I don't know what that kind of type is. Can we just pass in a function called submit? Let's define submit. And let's just print you pressed the button. And let's run this thing again. And let's press ask. And it says you pressed the button. So in fact, that is how we can detect pressing the button. Great. But what we want to happen when we press the button is that it should take a screenshot. And we can take a screenshot with the pillow library. So from PIL, we can import image grab. And I have to install pillow. So let's do pip install pillow. And then we can say here image grab dot grab. And this will grab the screenshot and it will return an image. So we can say that the screenshot is going to be that, and we can just say screenshot.save. And let's save it to screenshot.png. So if we save this and we run this thing again, and then we press the button, then it took like half a second, and I think it took the screenshot. So let's close it and let's see. And here we have a screenshot. Now the problem is that it has both my screens here, which I don't really want. I want to just have the main screen. So what we can do is we can pass into grab a bounding box. So we can basically crop out just the main screen. But that means we need to know how big the main screen is. So let's import another library called screen info. And let's pip install screen info. And what we can do in screen info is, I don't remember, so let's go to the definition of screen info. And we have a get monitors function. So let's in fact import from screen info get monitors. So then what we can do is we can say that the monitors are get monitors, and we can do for monitor in monitors if the monitor is primary. Then we're going to get the size. So let's say that the size is going to be a tuple, and we will have the monitor dot width and monitor dot height. And in fact, this one takes in 4 values. So the first 2 are like the top corner of the rectangle we're going to cut, and then the next 2 are the bottom corner. So we can put here 0, 0, and then monitor width, monitor height. And then we can just pass the size in here. So if we then run this thing, then now if I click ask and I check the screenshot, then it is just my main window. Amazing. So what else do we want to do? Well, we want to send the image and the prompt to ChatGPT. So how do we get the prompt? We have the input box here, and then we have the button, and then we submit the button. Now I guess we can just say input box here. Maybe we can print you typed in, and we can just put here input box dot get. But I don't really like that we are now accessing this kind of global variable. Let's see if it works first of all. Let's run it, and let's type here hello and click ask. You typed in hello, so it works. But I would like to pass it in somewhere. But I don't think this button takes in any like arguments. Does it take? I don't think so. But we could make our own function that could be submit input. And it would take in the input, and then it would create a submit function, and it would return this function. So isn't this called currying or something like this? And now we can reference this, which is now local to this function, this input. Of course, we don't really want to do this in here technically, because we want to reuse this submit input with other inputs that do something else. So let's copy this and let's define that as a different function. This is going to be ask ChatGPT, and it will do this and take in the input, which can actually be called the prompt, and we can pass it as text directly. And then we can pass in the function into this submit input, and then we can run the function. And I think we can type this as a callable, and then we can from typing import callable, and the input is going to be a tk.input. Sorry, tk, what is it? Entry. Like this. And into the function we can pass in input.get. So what is happening here now? We define a function that takes in an input element and a function to call. And it returns a function that will run the function we want to call and pass in the value of the input element we want to pass in. So then we can say that the command to this button is going to be submit input, and we pass in the input box, which is now this input box. And now we are passing it in there, and it's not a global thing, which means we can now also bind it to the actual input box. Because right now, if we now run this thing, actually we get an error because I didn't pass in the function. So we have to say submit input box, and we pass in here ask ChatGPT. So now if we run this thing and then we type something here and we click ask, then it says typed in this. But now if we would hit enter here, nothing happens. And I really want to hit enter. And we should also like hide this text or remove the text. Well, actually, we're probably going to close the window. So what we can do to bind the enter is we can say input box dot bind. And then here we pass in a key like enter. And we pass in the function. And we can pass the same function in here. Submit input box ask ChatGPT. And we might even move this into some submit func, which we can define here. Submit func is this thing, although we have to define it after we define the input box. So now, if we run it again and we type in something here, wait a minute, we got an error. Submit takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. I think the reason for this is that when we bind enter to an input box, then this will actually send what is the input in the input box, and it will pass it into the function. But our input function doesn't take anything, so we have to pass in here the input text, I believe it is, but we're not going to use it. So can we just define an underscore here? And we have to set it to like none by default, so that we can call this with and without it. Is there a better way of doing this? I don't know. Whatever, we can do that. So now if we run it, then it should work. If we type in something, and actually, why does it say you typed? When I click it, wait a minute. Did I not actually bind enter? What if I just press left here? No, what if I press H? Okay, what if I click it? Oh, actually H did something. What is going on? It's automatically submitting for some reason. Okay, that's not good. Maybe we are in like an infinite loop right now. So this is not the way to do it. Because it is not called enter, it is called return. So let's do it again. Does enter mean when you enter the field? So every time I put the mouse over, it sent the thing. Okay. But if I now say hello and I hit enter, then it says you typed in hello. And I can also do it here, and it works. Amazing. So then we should close the window, which I think we can just do in submit input. Well, not really. We have to do it in the function ask ChatGPT. So here we have to say window.destroy. But again, we are now referencing this window that is outside of the function. I don't really like that. So could I do it this way? Can I get the window from the input box? Is it available? Can I do... Well, I don't pass it in here now. So, whatever. We will leave it as window. Can I do that? Can I just reference the window? If I run it now, and I type in here, which is annoying that I have to click it. If I say hello, then it closes it. Okay. But actually what we want to do is we want to show the window when we press a button. So we need to import another library. We have to import PyInput. PyInput, I don't know how to say this library name, but let's pip install PyInput. And what we can do with PyInput is, let's take a look. Let's go to the definition of PyInput. And what do we have here? We have keyboard. So let's import keyboard. From PyInput, import keyboard. And what is in keyboard? We can do keyboard dot listener. Something like this. Listener. Let's go to the definition of keyboard. What do we have here? We have a listener. Okay, so keyboard dot listener with a capital letter. And for some reason, I don't get any information here. But we can do something with the listener. I'm sure of that. What is the listener? Let's go to the definition of the listener. No definition. Backend.listener. What is that? Well, that is not helpful. How does this thing work? Let's ask ChatGPT. So, how do I listen for, let's say, F9 with Pineput? To listen for the F9 key using the Pineput library, you can use the following code. Okay, so we installed Pineput and we imported keyboard. We define an onPress function and an onRelease function, and with keyboard listener onPress onRelease as listener. Okay, so I would have never guessed how to use this thing. Okay, so let's copy this code and let's paste it over here. Now, I don't think we care about the release. We just care about the press. So let's remove this onRelease from here. And basically, this will start the listener, and then it will call onPress when we press F9. Or in fact, when we press any key, then it will call onPress, and then it will check if the key was F9, then we can do something. So let's remove these comments from here. And here we should now do something like show assistant window. So we don't really want to do this in here directly. We want to have a specific function for this. So let's define a function, show assistant window, and it will do this stuff. And it will also start the main loop. Let's do that. Now at this point, I'm not sure if we have access to the window element. We do not, because it is now inside of this function. It is not global. So we have to figure something out. So let's actually pass in the window here. And then what we can do is we can pass in the window to the function we call from submit input. So can we get it from the input? Can we say input.window? Maybe we don't have that in there. So let's just pass in the window. I mean, it should be there. If we have an entry and we pass in the window as the master, then what is the master called? Entry, widget, master. Okay, so do we set the master somewhere? We call widget init with the master. So what does widget init do? We have the master here. Setup master. Do we save the master? Let's see what setup does. We have the master here, and we set self master to master. So we can say master. So we don't have to pass it in. We can just say that this is going to be the input dot, sorry, we pass it in here, but here we say input dot master. So then it should work. And let's see if it works. Let's start it again. Sorry, that was the wrong command. This one. And now it should be listening for F9. So if I press F9, it opens the window. It works. Now, it still sent F9, which is a bit annoying. It didn't actually capture it, but it works. And we can say hello and enter, and you typed in hello, and the window was closed. And if I press F9 again, it says ask the assistant. We can type in something and ask, and it works. Amazing. So now, instead of just taking a screenshot and saying what we pressed, we should connect to the ChatGPT API. So let's do that. Let's go to Vision in the OpenAI guides, and here we have an example. So we import OpenAI, we initialize the client, and then we send this kind of completion request. And here we pass in a URL, but we can also pass in a data URI. And here we can have the base64 formatted image. So let's do that. Let's copy this thing and let's do from OpenAI import OpenAI. And the client is OpenAI. And we have to install it. Pip install OpenAI. And we need an API key, but let's figure that out later. Let's define the function here for sending the image. Or I guess we can do it here in Ask ChatGPT. So after we get the screenshot, then we're going to do this. So response equals client chat completions create. And let's use GPT-4 or Mini. And we're going to send some messages. We are going to send a user message with the content, that is a list with the text and then the image. And the text is going to be our prompt. So what we typed into the text box. And the image is going to be a data URI. So it's data image / png base64, and then we have to add here the b64 image, which we need to create. So the b64 image is going to be base64.b64 encode, and let's import b64, import base64, and this one takes in a readable buffer, which I think can be just a string, or well, it's bytes, right? So well, we can still save the image, but let's take from the screenshot. Can we directly get the data from the screenshot dot? Is there like data? What is the thing? How can we get the actual data of the image? Bytes. Is there? There's from bytes, but is there 2 bytes? 2 bytes. There is. Okay, so we can do this. And this one returns bytes, but we have to pass in a string, so we can say decode UTF-8. So that should be the base64 encoded image. And we just slap it in here. And I don't want to set max tokens. I want to use a lot of tokens. And yeah, that's basically what we do. Now, we might want to send a system message as well. So let's add a system message. Role is system, and the content is going to be you are an AI-powered computer assistant who can see what the user is doing on the computer. Analyze what you can see and help the user with their request. Something like this. And once we send it, then we can... Let's leave this print statement here. Let's put it at the top. You typed in this, just so we see something is happening. And let's also print here sending ChatGPT request. And we can get the response from this. And in the response, we are going to have response choices 0 message content. So that is the response. So let's call it response content. And for now, let's just print it out. Print response content. And we probably want to destroy the window earlier, because this is going to take a few seconds. So we don't want the screen to get stuck there. So let's do it up here. Like, why not? We don't need the window anymore, right? Because we have the text. This is already a string. And the window is going to be a tk.tk, I guess. So now we have to add the OpenAI API key into the environment variable, which you can also do here. You can say API key equals something, but I like to use environment variables. So I am going to do export OpenAI API key equals, and then I will paste in here my API key, which you can find from the OpenAI platform. If you go to dashboard and then you go to API keys, and then just create a new one and then you slap it here. But I have done that now, so we should be able to run Python 3 main.py. And if I now press F9, it will open the window. And if I ask something like, what language am I working on right now? And I hit enter, then we are sending ChatGPT request. And are we going to get an answer? Bad request. You uploaded an unsupported image. Make sure your image is below 20 megabytes in size and is of the following formats: PNG, JPEG, GIF, or WebP. Well, I think something went wrong with the base64 encode. So let's actually check the guide. So what do they want us to do? Base64, B64 encode, decode. Did I say decode? I did say decode. And the URL is data image PNG base64. B64 image. What's wrong with this? Data image PNG base64. Interesting. 2 bytes is not the JPEG. It is some internal storage. For compressed image data, PNG, JPEG, use save with a bytes IO parameter for in-memory data. Aha. Save. So if we want to read the image data as PNG without saving it to the computer, which I'm actually doing here, but I don't ultimately want to do that, we have to import bytes IO. How does this work? Bytes IO from IO import bytes IO. It's like this. And then we can use this somehow. We can say that the screenshot data is bytes IO, and then we can save this to the bytes IO object, and then we can take the screenshot data, which I think will already be a readable buffer, and then we can decode that. Let's see if that works. Let's run this thing again and press F9, and let's say, what language am I working on right now? And hit enter. Unknown file extension. Because we need to say that the format is going to be PNG, like this. So then it knows what to save. Let's try it again. F9. What am I doing? Enter. Bytes-like object is required, not IO bytes IO. So, screenshot data dot 2 bytes. There's no 2 bytes. Get buffer. That must be it. Let's try one more time. And let's show some code here. And F9 and say, what am I doing right now? Enter. Now we're sending it. And do we get a response from ChatGPT? You are coding in Python using Visual Studio Code. It looks like you are working on a script that takes a screenshot potentially related to an application or project named GPT-4 Helper. You have a Tkinter window open with a button labeled Ask, and you're also executing a command in the terminal to run your Python script. Great, so now it works. But I would like to show this text also in a window, not here. So let's do that. Let's create a function, show ChatGPT response, and let's pass in the response, which is a string, and this one should again open a window. So let's do window equals tk.tk. But now this apparently is not really the way you should do this, because as you might remember, we started this main loop, but we don't really want to have multiple main loops. So what we can do, although, I mean, we're going to close this window, so maybe we can. Let's not do this refactor yet. Let's just say the window is tk, and let's say window title is going to be assistant response. And let's add some text to it. So the way we add text is, well, there is a tk.text, but we want to have a scrollable text. So we have to import that separately. We have to say from tkinter.scrolledText import scrolled text. And then what we can do is we can say that the text is going to be scrolled text. And then here we can pass in the window as the master. And what else? Can we see some options? We can't really. How does this work? Let's take a look. What are the keyword arguments? Okay, here's an example. Well, that's a very helpful thing. So we have to call insert, and we have to pass in end, and then I believe this is the text that we're gonna insert. Okay, so let's do just this, and let's say text.insert end and the response. And this is probably tk.end. So that should add the response into the scrolled text. And we have to again do window.main_loop. Let's see if we can have many main loops. I mean, it should close the main loop when we close the original window. So basically that should do it, but we have to pack it. Text pack. And let's do pad y10 and pad x10. And I saw that here we had this focus set, which we might not want to do with the scroll text, but we want to do it when we open the assistant window. So with the input box, I want to say input box dot set focus set, like this. So hopefully it's focused right away. And now that we have this function, we can just call it here. Instead of print, we can say show ChatGPT response. Let's see if it in fact works. Let's run it. Let's press F9. And now we're focused right away. What can you see? And enter. And then we should get the response in an actual window. And here it is. So now it works. I see that you're working in Visual Studio Code, where you have a Python script open, likely named main.py. Okay, now this is interesting. It can see the pop-up dialog. So why is that there? So we shouldn't take a screenshot here when we do ask ChatGPT, because we're still going to have the window open. Although we do call window destroy, but maybe it's not that fast. And yeah, we should actually take the screenshot when we press F9. So let's move this in there. So we have to figure out how we can get the screenshot data in there. But when we press F9, we take the screenshot. Could we have a function? Take screenshot. And we can define that here. Take screenshot. And we can do this stuff in there. Now, at this point, it might be easier to just save the screenshot on the computer, and then we can just read it from there. But since I already started to make it so that we don't have to save it, let's actually not save it. We don't want to... Wait a minute. We are not saving it. We are saving it only in here. We only save it in the bytes.io object. And let's return the screenshot data. So this will return a bytes.io, and the screenshot is going to be that. And let's actually make it a readable buffer. So this is readable, or just bytes. Can we say bytes? And then we can say here to buffer. Or what was it called? To buffer. As buffer. Get buffer. So here we can pass in screenshot. So we have to pass it into this thing. So let's figure out how we can do that. Screenshot, which is going to be bytes. And down here we have to say get buffer, which is actually a memory view int. So whatever. Memory view int. So then we take the screenshot and we have to pass in the screenshot to the assistant window. And this will take the screenshot and it has to pass it into Ask ChatGPT somehow. Can we just pass in here like a keyword argument? Screenshot equals screenshot. And then in submit input we can take also keyword arguments. Is this how it works? I think it works like this. And then we can pass in keyword args here. Is it like this? Or do we still have to do this thing here? Maybe. So then we can pass in whatever keyword arguments to the function we want to call. And then they should just work, right? Because we call ask ChatGPT and we always pass in the input and then the window and then keyword arguments. Maybe that will work. So let's see if it works. Let's run this thing again. And type object is not subscriptable. What is that? I don't care about the return type. Never mind. Run it again. And F9. Ask the assistant. What does this error mean? I could say that. And let's send it. And then it sends the ChatGPT request. And I mean, I should have asked it what it can see because it might not tell me otherwise. But it did respond. The error messages in your output indicate a couple of issues. Keyboard interrupt. This occurs when you interrupt a running program, commonly by pressing Ctrl+C. It means you stop the execution of the script. Type object is not subscriptable. This error suggests that there's an attempt to use indexing like accessing elements on a type object. This typically happens when you try to index a class or data type itself rather than an instance. Suggested fix. Check the function take screenshot. Make sure you're returning an instance of memory view and not the type. Review any line of code where you're using brackets. Okay, so it works. Let's try again. Can we press F9 again? And what can you see? I see that you're working in Visual Studio Code, specifically on a Python file named main.py. Okay. If you need help diagnosing the issue, please share the relevant code snippet where the error occurs, particularly around line 82 as indicated in the traceback. Okay, so it works. I'm quite happy with that. So what's next? I think it pretty much works now. Let's make the text size a bit bigger in the response. So how do we do that? I think there was some sort of text.config CFG or not. Why can't I see the definition of these things? So let's go to scroll text. Can we see this? We can't see even this thing. Why can't we see it? I saw it before. Scroll text. Let's go to scroll text here. And we have class scroll text. But for some reason VS Code doesn't understand. Anyway, let's go to the example. Insert pack. Is it about the pack? Do we here have some sort of CNF? Okay. But here I have this definition. So it actually extends text, which has the font size somewhere. Font size, text size. Let's ask ChatGPT. Let's copy this code and let's say, how can I make this text a larger font? To make the text inside a scrolled text widget have a larger font in Tkinter, you need to set a font for the widget. Okay, just font. Okay, we have to define it this way. Just font, and then the font and the size. That makes sense. So here we pass in font, which is going to be, let's do Arial and 12. I also want to make the submit input box. Where is it? Input box. I want to make it bigger. So can we pass in here a width? And let's put something like 100. Because I think these are not pixels, these are some screen units. So let's try. Let's press F9 and it opens, and that was way too big. So let's hit ESC. ESC doesn't actually close it, which is something we might want to bind as well. But anyway, let's make it just 50 and run it. F9. Ask the assistant. Okay, can we just close it and nothing happens? Let's go to a spreadsheet and let's ask, how do we get the totals here? How can we calculate totals here? I don't know how to do this. Let's press F9. How can I add totals to the rows? Then it's loading. Now it would be nice to have some loading window because now we just have to wait here. To add totals to the rows in your Google spreadsheet, you can use a formula to calculate the total for each product based on the price and quantity. Select the first cell in the total column, D2, for the first row of data. So it is in fact D2. Okay. Enter the formula B2 times C2. This formula multiplies the price B2 by the quantity. Press enter. This will give you the total. Drag the fill handle. Click on the small square in the bottom right corner of the cell D2 that contains your formula and drag it down to fill the formula into the other rows. Great. So let's close this thing. Let's press D2, paste in this formula, which didn't do anything. I think I copied it. And this is stuck now. Why is this stuck? Am I still recording? Is this because of my script? Or what? Am I still running? It's still running. I can do everything here. Can I paste here? Now this is stuck too. I tried to paste. So, what's going on? Now, VS Code is not responding. Let's wait and let's press Ctrl C over here. Damn it, if I can press it. Ctrl C. I think I screwed up my whole computer now. Okay, so everything works now. I had to kill the Python program because for some reason it got everything stuck. And I feel like that has something to do with the keyboard listener, but I'm not sure what it's doing. I wonder if this thing gets stuck somehow because we have the main loop in here. So does the onPress function somehow hang if something is like running here for a long time? Let's actually print here. Pressed F9 And then down here, let's say finished handling F9. And if I then run this thing and I press F9, then in fact, it just says pressed F9. But now it's waiting for this to finish before it does anything. So does that mean that now I can't really do any key presses? Perhaps. So what we might want to do is run this procedure in another thread. So let's import, in fact, from threading, import thread. And we can create here, let's in fact define here, if name equals main, then we're going to do all this. And we are going to start a thread. So let's call it, I don't know, worker thread is a thread. And we have to pass in a target. So target is going to be worker. And we can define this function, worker. And I think we can communicate with the thread with queues. So let's import from multi-processing, import queue. And what we can do is we can create the worker queue here. Now again, I'm not that familiar with these kind of things, so I'm not even sure if I have to make a thread or how this works. If you know how this works, then let me know in the comments if I'm doing this completely wrong or completely right or something in between. Anyway, we create the queue and we can pass that as an argument here. So we have the queue here. And in the thread, when we start the thread, we can pass in args here. And here we can pass in the worker queue like this. And then we can start the worker thread. Worker thread start. And what we can do in the worker is we can say queue.wait or queue.get, I believe it is. And we should say that this is a queue, so we get auto completion. Queue.get, which means we're going to wait for something to appear in the queue, and then we are going to run this stuff. So let's move this here. And when we press F9, we are only going to send a message to the queue. So we can say queue.put, and I think we can just send whatever in there because we are just waiting for the queue. So what if we set true? Now we don't have the queue. So how do we get the queue? How do we pass it in here? Do we have to do some sort of currying again? I mean, I guess we could just move this onPress function here. Then I think we're going to have access to the queue because we define it here. If we say worker queue, like this. And I think we have to call down here worker queue.join ultimately. So now basically we start a queue and we start a worker thread and we pass in the worker queue to that thread. It is going to wait for a signal from the queue, which maybe there's like a signal also. It doesn't need to be a queue, whatever. Anyway, it's going to wait for that. Once it gets it, then it's going to do this thing. So this means that when we press the F9 key and we just put into the worker queue a message, then that will be instantaneous and then this will run just in the thread. So if we now print here, pressed F9, and then we print here released, or not really released, it's just finished F9. And if we now run this and we press F9, then it says pressed F9, finished F9, and we opened the assistant box. So can I say, can you guess what I'm doing? Enter. Does it still work? It looks like you are coding in Python using Visual Studio. Specifically, you seem to be working on a script that handles keyboard input, where pressing F9 key triggers certain actions. Okay, it still works. And if we close this, does it still work? And more importantly, does it work here? If we now press F9 here, it doesn't work anymore. So why is that? We detected the press of the button, but we didn't do it anymore because we are doing this just once. What we in fact have to do is we have to say while true queueGet. So this is going to be running in the worker thread all the time. It's going to get something from the queue. When it comes, it's going to do this. Then it's going to wait until we get another one, and then it's going to do that again. So let's try one more time. Open it. Let's go here, press F9, and how can I calculate the totals for the products? Ask. And then it is going to respond. To calculate the totals, you can do this. So basically the same thing as before. So we can copy this formula. We can close this. We can put this here. And it still doesn't work. Damn it. Why doesn't it work? Wait a minute. We pressed F9. We finished F9. And then it got stuck. That's weird. Let's ask it. So let's run it. Let's do this. Let's say F9. And let's say, why does this code make everything stuck after pressing F9? Enter. The issue with the code causing everything to get stuck after pressing 9 likely stems from the way the keyboard listener and worker thread are being managed. Here are some possible reasons and solutions. Blocking on listener.join. The listener.join call blocks the execution of your program until the listener thread has terminated. If the listener is running indefinitely, which is often the case with keyboard listeners, the program will appear to be stuck after pressing F9. You might want to run listener.join in a separate thread, or set up a condition to exit the listener properly. Okay, possible refactoring. Okay, so here we say while true, if not worker queue empty. Then we get it. Okay, do we have to do that? And here we have the onPress, which is basically the same code that we have. Start worker thread, set up listener, signal to stop the worker. Wait for the worker to finish. But I don't want to stop the worker. Okay, so I messed around with it for a while, and I figured out that it is actually something to do with the copying. So if I just run this thing, and I go here, and I press F9, and I say something like, how can I calculate the totals? And I send it, and then it will respond. Then if I just take a look at this thing, and I just close it, and then I can do anything here, I can paste in some stuff that I had copied earlier, everything works. But if I press F9, and I do something, and I am going to copy this word from here, and I will close it, and then I try to actually type it. I can type in anything here, that's fine, but when I do Ctrl V, it gets stuck. So what is that? Why? And now that I stopped it, can I now paste it here? What did it paste? Yes, now it works. So is it trying to get something from the window after it's closed? Because we're trying to paste. Or what is going on? Let's ask ChatGPT. When I try to copy text from a scrolled text element and paste it to another window after the scrolled text window has been destroyed, my computer hangs. Why? When you destroy the scroll text window and then try to copy the text from it, the text buffer associated with the scroll text widget might be dereferenced or deleted. Interesting. How to fix it? Copy text to clipboard before destroying. Okay, but I'm not copying it with code. I'm not copying the text with code, but rather Ctrl C and Ctrl V. If you're manually copying text using Ctrl C and pasting it between Ctrl V, and the system hangs after the widget is destroyed, it's likely related to how the clipboard works in conjunction with Tkinter and a window management. Okay. Clipboard ownership. Window destruction. Okay. Solution 1. Explicit clipboard management. Okay. I really don't want to handle the clipboard myself. That is very weird. So here it's binding to Ctrl C. But can I actually just copy it normally? What if I go here and I hit F9 and I say, how do I calculate the total price? And I ask it, and then I just copy this with, I can't do right click. Okay, which is interesting. Can I actually edit? I can edit this thing, which is not great. Okay, so what if the window is open and I copy it and then I paste it here? Then it works. So can we do this? As I mentioned earlier, we have this main loop now in two different places. So one thing we could do is in main, we could just start here a root window, and this is going to be tk, and we can set root.title to assistant. Let's call it GPT-4 assistant, and we can say root.withdraw, which will hide this window. But then what we can do when we initialize the other windows is we actually say tk.topLevel, and we pass in here the root. Can I access the root now? I guess it's now a global variable. I guess it's fine. So we do this instead. And we don't call main loop here, and we don't call main loop in this one either. So this is top level root again, and we don't call this. But here we do call the main loop somewhere. Now this is a problem because we need to have this listener here, but we also need to start root.main_loop, but this is a blocking command. So then we can't start the keyboard listener. So this might even be the issue why it didn't work. Maybe when you copy something, then you can't stop the main loop after you have pasted the information. So let's make a thread for the listener. So let's copy this, and let's say that the listener thread is going to be a new thread, and the target is going to be keyboard listener, and the args here are also the worker queue, and we can start this thread as well, listener thread dot start, and we have to join it, listener thread join. And by the way, this should be worker thread, not worker queue. And we have to define the keyboard listener function. So keyboard listener is going to do this thing. And we pass in the queue like this. So now it should work. Let's see if that works. We have the queue. We start the worker thread. We start the listener thread. And then we start the main loop thread, or the Tkinter thread. Basically, we have like 3 threads now. And then we don't start another thread for Tkinter in the other windows. We only use the original main loop. So now, finally, let's see how this works. If we run it, and we go here, let's remove all this stuff, and let's say F9. How can I add totals to the rows? And then it will respond, this is how you can add. So we have the formula, we will copy the formula, we will close this thing, we will paste it here, and it worked. I solved it. That's amazing. And then we can just do this, and it works. So let's try again, F9. How can I add an average price? Enter. And it will tell me this is how I can do it. So we can use this kind of formula to average. Select the cell for average, click on the cell where you want to display the average, and then put the formula. So let's copy the formula, close this thing, put it here. And that's the average. Now it works. Now there are some improvements we could make to the UI. This is a very crude version right now, but it works pretty well, honestly. So let's now answer the age-old question. Can GPT-4 Vision exit Vim? So let's open a terminal here. Let's open Vim. And what? Well, how can we close this? ESC. No, we can't do anything. So let's press F9 and ask the assistant. I was trying to edit a file, but I got stuck in this view. What to do? Ask. It looks like you're in a terminal in a text mode editor, possibly Nano or Vim. Here's how to exit depending on which editor you are in. If you're in Nano, press Ctrl X to exit. If you are in Vim, press ESC to ensure you are in normal mode, type :Q and hit enter. Okay, so it knows. ESC :Q enter. Amazing. GPT-4 Vision can exit Vim. But this is now going to be the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have suggestions how I could improve this project, then let me know in the comments. Also, if you have any other video ideas, then let me know and I might take your idea if it's good enough. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one.